Hi, and welcome to this series where I'm going through the ITIL4 practices individually and giving you the main headline points you need to be aware of in order to understand ITIL4 and build your base knowledge. I'll also be discussing some of my real world application of these practices in the various organisations I've worked in. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, click the bell for those updates. Okay, so let's get to it. Today I'm going to be covering off problem management from the service management practice. Reminder, what's a practice? It's a set of organisational resources designed for performing work or accomplishing an objective. First off, just before we head into problem management and the problem management practice, it's worth reinforcing the point between what's the difference between incident and problem. If you're new to ITIL, this actually can seem quite confusing. You may think, well, they're the same thing, aren't they? Well, not quite. Problems and incidents, they are related to each other, but the way we deal with them, the way we manage, the techniques we use, they do differ. They of course complement each other, and they work and they play nicely together in the sandpit, and they work well in the value chain, but more on this later. They are different. The purpose of incident management is about minimizing negative impact, i.e. trying to get the service back to its operational state as soon as you can. It's an unplanned interruption to a service of some kind, or the quality of it's gone bad. Problem, simply put, a problem causes an incident. It's about reducing the possibility of an incident happening in the first place. How do you do that? I hear you say, well, it's about discovering the cause, what happened in the first place, and then doing a whole load of stuff to try and avoid it from happening again, or managing it if it happens again. In fact, there's a defined problem approach which goes into identifying it, then controlling the problem, and then controlling the error. More on that later. There's also root cause analysis activities, and there's major incident reporting, looking at why did it happen, and most importantly, organisations will say, what can we do to prevent this from happening again? And there's also a variety of techniques in problem management. Again, more on that later. So let's get some definitions and some purpose statements clear. A problem, by definition, is a cause or potential cause of one or more incidents. A known error, by definition, is a problem that's been analysed but has not been resolved, i.e. there's some kind of way of fixing it, taping it up, if you like. Problem as a purpose, so what's the purpose of problem management? It's reducing the likelihood and reducing the impact of incidents by identifying the actual and identifying the potential causes of incidents, as well as managing workarounds and known errors. So new word there, workaround. What's a workaround then? So a workaround is a solution that reduces or ideally eliminates the impact of an incident or a problem for which a full resolution is not yet available. Some workarounds reduce the likelihood of incidents. There are two parts to problem management in my experience, day-to-day wise, the proactive element and the reactive element. The proactive, some real world examples of that is looking at trends. So for example, I can think in a number of organisations I've performed an activity looking at the data and come up with a conclusion to say, that's interesting. At month end or at year end, compute power peaks in the finance function. Why is that? Or last week or last month, maybe the last week of each month, perhaps in the payroll department, the payroll department complain about performance issues. Question, perhaps there's some kind of relationship or correlation to when the payroll system runs and generates everybody's pay slips. Perhaps there's a capacity issue or a compute or processing issue there. Other kind of proactive analysis, it definitely involves your service providers, your suppliers, your vendors. They may advise you of a bug or some kind of vulnerability that they're aware of, and they're working on it, but they've informed you in advance. Or perhaps you've seen something in a forum or a user community or a user group, perhaps, where there's an element of sharing information, either within an industry or a particular sector. Or maybe there's just been a straightforward audit. Maybe your internal team or your external auditors have come in and looked at a particular area, and they've highlighted part of an assessment, some kind of issue or some problem there. So there's a proactive element, but then there's a reactive element. So that's noting the symptoms and registration of a problem record for an incident which has already happened. So it's already in play. It's happened, and the aim here is basically you're looking to prevent incidents from reoccurring. Techniques. So I'm going to talk through a number of techniques generally, but over the last X number of years, probably the last 20 years, particularly from a problem management perspective, areas that I've been involved in, the techniques, and it is dependent on different organisations and the way that they approach problem management. But brainstorming, Ishikawa, and Kepner-Trago are three areas I've specifically been involved in when it comes to problem management techniques. Brainstorming happened to be in an environment where there was a lot of creativity, there was a lot of creative teams there, and it was sort of a media type organisation, and there's lots of creative people there, lots of discussion, lots of people getting involved, lots of blue sky thinking and ideas. And one of the really good things of that came out, it was sort of a kind of a round robin discussion, if you like, that thoughts and ideas came out that other people wouldn't have necessarily thought of. They were, just kind of, they weren't out there ideas. They were really good, solid ideas that were kind of like, oh yeah, didn't even think of that. Brilliant. The Ishikawa, so fishbone analysis. I've been involved in a lot of complex problems, and this has mainly been reactive management. To be fair, where the cause could be many, 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 many possibilities. But typically very, very complex type problems. And then the Kepner-Trago is very logical, very methodical approach. It's a mature problem management technique, and I've used that for reactive and for proactive problem management, where the potential cause again could be many, many, many possibilities. Typically you have 4 stages to it. So you look at the as is situation, you appraise the situation. In fact, I think it's situation appraisal. Then you do the problem analysis bit, which is why it happened. Then the decision analysis phase around the actual cause, and then potential problem analysis. So in reality, okay, so what are the actions here, and what are the risks? So if I just list out some of the other techniques, you've got chronological analysis, you've got brainstorming, Kepner-Trago, the Ishikawa, Pareto analysis, the 5 whys, where I've used that actually occasionally, probably not as much as the other 3 I mentioned. For that's useful for identifying root cause on minor problems. You just keep saying why, basically. And then FTA, which is fault tree analysis. So if I just flick through, so we've kind of talked about the brainstorming, and that's really good for generating ideas. It's easy to use. It stops over domination. So there's an element of people can't dominate that process. Everyone's got an equal say. There's a round robin activity, and it's about ideas. It's creativity. The Kepner-Trago, again, we've spoken about that, and it's really useful when there's lots of potential causes. That's quite a mature technique. It's quite detailed. It's well documented. it is quite time consuming because you end up looking at lots and lots of possible cause, but it's a really good technique, and used it for many years. And the Ishikawa, the fishbone analysis, is perhaps something I've used the most, and that's really useful where you're looking to look at what are all the probable causes. So you basically have a checklist, and that really works well when you've got multiple teams. If you've got lots of different silos, you can start to sort of link those together. And yeah, that's really useful. Pareto analysis, that's useful when you're trying to drill down and say, okay, where are most of the problems caused? So you can say you end up sort of with a statement that says, okay, 80% of the problems can be traced back to 20% of the causes. So you can look at, perhaps if you're looking at a server or a piece of hardware, for example, you would end up with um, a, a bar chart with the various items at the bottom, and then the bars listing the frequency. And it may be, well, that's really interesting. Most of the problems seem to occur to do with, I don't know, the network card, for the sake of argument, or capacity, or I don't know, backups, whatever it may be. But it's really useful for kind of drilling down into what are the most important areas. There's lots and lots of problems, but where do we get the most bang for our buck? It's a statistical approach, basically. It's a useful tool, particularly in terms of perception. So you can deliver a statement to say, look, we've done the analysis and we know 80% of the problems are relating to this particular area, or this function. So that's good. The five whys is exactly as it sounds on the tin. It's good for minor problem analysis. It's a simple technique, and there's an element of it's quite casual in the way that it brings relationships and identifies those relationships together. And then the FTA, that's fault tree analysis. It looks at possible system or design failures, and again, it's linking into that casual relationship piece, and probability. It's certainly useful for linking possible causes. If we then just go on to the phases of problem management, so there's three phases in problem management you should be aware of. The first one's problem identification, second one is problem control, and the third one is error control. So as you might imagine, problem identification is about identifying what are the problems and then recording them, making sure that you've written it down electronically. There's a log of some kind that says these are the problems that we know of. And then that's a useful activity when you want to perform your trend analysis, and you look at incidents, for example. Go into your ITSM tool, pull all the incidents out relating to a particular CI perhaps, or a service, or whatever it may be, and then perform your trend analysis on your incidents. Look at incident, there may be some interrelated connections there, or you may be able to correlate some volume relating to time of year or time of month, which I'd mentioned earlier. It's really useful for analysing and looking at reoccurring issues. I mentioned one particular problem where I'd spotted, for whatever reason, the last week of each month there seems to be an increase in this type of issue. Why is that? And then that starts your problem management. Also, make sure you've got a strong connection into your major incident response, and your major incident manager, and your major incident process and practice. Just make sure you have a problem management clearly. When you've got a major incident on the go, from an incident management perspective, you're trying to get back to operational service as soon as possible, there may be other connections there that will fall out of that major incident practice that then says, and you can bet your bottom dollar, any major exec or leader is going to say, once you've got back and you're operational, what happened? And more to the point, what can we do to make sure it doesn't happen again? That's your problem management practice. That's where that comes in. So there's a strong connection with incident management and your major incident management in particular. So look at your ITSM tool, look at incidents, look at the data. Can you replicate any of these problems? Can you duplicate them? Just make sure you've got those loops in your major incident management process. So that's the identification bit. Identify it, log it, look at your incidents, make sure you've got major incident looped into there. Make sure you're speaking to internal teams, suppliers, customers, and you've got that engagement going on. The problem control phase is more around, okay, so I've mentioned about root cause analysis a moment ago. So it's, let's get this root cause analysis. What actually caused the problem? What can we do to understand more about what happened? It's about documenting the workarounds, looking at a known error, so a KE. Maybe there's a known error about this, or do we create a known error that okay, we don't have a fix to this particular incident, but we know it's a known error. And prioritizing, managing the problems, managing the risks, and I'll do a section on risk management in over the coming days about this. But look at the risk, look at the prioritization, which are the activities that need to be considered. And then the third phase is around error control. So this is managing your known errors, looking for solutions that can be permanent, assessing what's the benefit, what's the cost, what's the risk in terms of any RFCs, and then evaluating effectiveness of workarounds. So it's really important that you adapt here. The mistake I've seen in so many organizations is that a workaround has been created, and then it's so easy just to say, yeah, to fix this, do this. Okay, that's fair enough, but you must reassess the status of known errors. Think, for example, and I've certainly seen this, that workarounds have been put in place when actually the problem still it actually isn't there anymore. So one particular organisation I worked for many years ago, there was a workaround to a particular user issue, and the service desk was still providing that workaround, and it was in a self-service function as well, in a knowledge base. But actually, because the software had been upgraded a couple of years back, that problem doesn't exist anymore. So even if that activity from a user perspective happens, it's actually overridden. So the software upgraded fixed the issue. So that's a really good example of where you must evaluate the effectiveness of your workarounds, and are they still relevant? So you're turning that resolution of an incident, in this particular case, it was still being closed and resolved with the code of a workaround as the resolution code rather, but actually no, it had been fixed. So big kind of question there. Like a lot of other practices, problem management practice has relationships with some of those other practices. And when I talk about practice, I'm meaning general management practice, I'm talking service management practice, I'm talking technical management practice. But a few headline practices: risk management. So there's a link between problem management and risk management. Risk management's identifying the risks which should be recorded in your risk register. Now, when it comes to problem management, think in terms of organisation and people, information and technology, partners and suppliers, value streams and processes, i.e. the 4 dimensions. So putting something in a risk register starts the activity off in order to help control the risk. being identified and managing that, and you're controlling it. Change control, I mentioned that a few moments ago as well, that if there's a major incident, for the sake of argument, and something needs to happen, your exec are clearly going to want to know, okay, well, from a problem management perspective, what happened and how do we address it and how do we fix it? Maybe there's a change needed here. So the outcome of problem management may be that the output may need to be, okay, so in order to fix this problem, we need to upgrade something, we need to enhance something, we need to add something, perhaps we need to remove something or reconfigure it. Now, I'm hoping in your mind, as I'm saying these items, alarm bells should be ringing and you should be thinking, that's the kind of thing we need to present at Change Advisory Board, right? Absolutely. So change control, there's a good connection into problem management there. The output of the problem management may be, yeah, we need to upgrade this system, or we need to remove this component or reconfigure something. These are good change advisory items I would expect to see in the CAB. Knowledge management. So clearly, as part of problem management, you're going to be generating documents, there's going to be workarounds, there's going to be known error information. This is all good stuff, and this is all of benefit that can be added to your knowledge management system. It's useful information. The knowledge management system, you want to make that a good go-to place when you're also embarking on the investigation, diagnosis and the resolving journey of problem management. And then continual improvement as well as another area. So problems are great continual improvement opportunities. Whenever I go into an organisation, I particularly like to make sure I create my own continual improvement log and tracker so I can reference back to it. And quite often problems appear on those in terms of what are the items that that immediately you can see that are problems. What can you do? How did this happen? What's the workaround? I can certainly think of a number of cases where problems have happened, they've been fixed, or there's been a workaround, and then they've totally been forgotten about. And then years can go past, and people just get into the mindset of, this is just how we work here, this is how we do it, when this happens, that happens. Well, continual improvement kind of challenges that, and you would want something like that to be in your tracker, to be in your continual improvement register, just to make sure they're not forgotten over time. And then let's talk about the value chain. So the service value chain activities in problem management. A quick reminder around what is the service value chain. That's the component that's right at the middle of the service value system, and the service value chain has a number of activities. Those are planning, improving, engaging, designing and transitioning, obtaining and building, delivering and supporting. All of those end up delivering a product or a service of some kind, which will deliver value. In terms of problem management, the areas of special attention and high heat, if you like, lots of activity, generating lots of heat, is around the delivery and support activity and the improve activity. While I just think of that, the emphasis around problem management, it's really important that you encourage your subject matter experts to actually register problems. In so many different organisations, I've seen problems kind of come and go, and they get forgotten. The day-to-day, the BAU, keeping the lights on, is hard enough. So when something's fixed, it's so easy just to go, okay, well, that's fixed now, I'm now going to move on to something else. Okay, but let's just keep a track of some of these problems, register some of these problems, don't skip them and just carry on the day job. You can and that kind of links into this service value chain activity that allows you to be able to map those. Some parting points around problem management and the problem management practice. Consider them over the 4 dimensions. So be holistic about it. This goes back to one of the guiding principles think holistically here. So when it comes to problem management, don't just think technology, think organization, think people, think information and technology, think partners and suppliers, and also the value streams and the process. And the emphasis here is around removing the root cause for issues from an unknown origin. Quick fire definitions and purpose. Problem definition is a cause or a potential cause of one or more incidents. A known error definition, a problem that has been analysed but has not been resolved. I always think about taping something up in that case. And then the purpose of the problem management practice, it's reducing the likelihood and the impact of incidents by identifying actual but also potential causes of incidents, and then managing those workarounds and known errors. Remember the 3 phases. So you've got problem identification, problem control, and then error control. And then finally, just consider the techniques. I've used 3 techniques on a fairly regular basis in the organisations I've operated within. But do think about what are the best techniques for you. And part of that is what's the culture of the organisation? What's the appetite? How does it? What's the vision of the organisation? How does it operate? And you will find that different techniques will work better in different organisations. Okay, thank you very much. Please do subscribe, hit the bell, and please like the video. Thank you.